everybody, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics, and this is my review of the Holosun SCS 320. As you guys know, I'm pretty much Patreon exclusive these days. I do occasionally put up a video on YouTube, but if you want to see it first, or you want to see videos that no one else is going to see here, you got to subscribe to the Patreon. Not a big deal. If you don't, that's cool. Absolutely fine. I definitely still appreciate you guys following me here on YouTube, but just be aware that on Patreon, we're putting out 2, 3, 4 videos a week sometimes. And some videos are just never going to make it to YouTube. They're just going to remain Patreon exclusive. But every now and then I do still put out a video on YouTube. And this particular video is my review of Holosun's SCS 320. So I hope you guys enjoy. Technically, actually not even technically, not a red dot sight. It is green reticle. The SCS is a line solar charging sight of optics from Holosun that have supercapacitors in them. They have an internal battery. So anytime that solar panel comes in contact with even moderate light, it recharges a quoted 20,000 hour battery life. Now, 20,000 hours on a battery that you have to replace, not terrible, but not super great either. Some people want more than that. Well, with the SCS, it's constantly recharging itself. Anytime you're out at the range using it, it's going to charge, which means the battery is charged in perpetuity until some kind of failure on down the road, which is sometimes a concern that comes up. Obviously, I don't have a time machine, so I can't jump forward in time and tell you how many years it's going to last. That's just not something that we're able to do. But the SCS has been around for a while now, a couple of years, and my first SCSs are still running strong. What's cool about the 320 footprint version, because what they're doing with the SCS, at least right now, is they're putting it for specific footprints. So it's a direct mount optic to a direct mount footprint. This one is particular to SIG for Delta Point Pro. And it's enclosed, which is cool because there aren't a lot of options in that regard, and it has a multi-directional light sensor in it, so it's auto adjust only. And as you guys probably already know, I'm a big fan of their auto adjust features, and the SCS turns out to be no different. There's one exception to that, which we'll get to. It is a green emitter 2 MOA dot with an optional 32 MOA circle, the reticle that Holosun has become very well known for. And this is kind of where optics are going. This is where, if you think about a race towards the bottom, eventually you get down to which brand you want to support because they all have very similar performance, durability, and features. With Holosun, they were one of the first ones to kind of pioneer smart auto adjust. If you've ever shot in low light, you know that like comparing it, and I don't want to, but I have to, comparing it to like the first generation of RMRs and the second generation of RMRs, they had an auto adjust feature, but it was kind of trash because it wasn't good for realistic conditions. It was good for it's just dark. If I have an optic with a photoreceptor like those had, a light receptor, a light meter, whatever you want to call it, and I turn my weapon light on, the optic wasn't smart enough to know that I had a well-illuminated target. It just thought it was still dark because the receptor pointed to the rear. So it was picking up the darkness and not the light I was pushing down range, so it didn't really meter the brightness of the dot well enough for me to be able to see it really well, especially at closer ranges or if you had a really bright weapon light. And that's certainly not an excuse to use an anemic weapon light. With the SCS, you didn't have that problem because it collects light from around the optic, not just pointing in one direction to the other, so it meters that brightness accordingly, and it performs very, very well under low light conditions. Now, it is a 70-75 aluminum body. Like I said, it is enclosed, so you got that front mirror lens. I know a lot of people are big fans of that, and I think they were able to kind of do that because of the size of the 320 footprint. Some footprints are smaller and it would have been more difficult. Because there's not a removable battery to worry about, you don't have to worry about top load or side load because it's got that internal system, they didn't really have to worry about designing the footprint in any way to be able to allow access to a 1632 or a 1620 or even a 2032 battery. So it's already got a lot going for it. Question is it durable and how well does it perform? I mounted it on a SIG Legion P320, which is a gun I use for a lot of reviews because I like this gun. It's got the Spectre comp on it. Not really talking about the gun. If you guys are curious about it, there's a video about it, but you've probably seen this gun pop up in quite a few optic reviews because I like this gun. Mounting was super easy, torqued the spec, got it zeroed, and started shooting it. I don't like green reticles, I'll be honest with you. And it's kind of a preference thing because I can't say there's any reason why under just normal, non-specific conditions, a red emitter is going to be superior. Now, there are some areas where red is superior as far as temperature ranges and battery life and things like that, but what I understand about the size of things is red emitters are actually a little bit bigger, so they couldn't really fit one in there, so they went with the green emitter. And green's fine. It's workable. This dot, it adjusts very, very well the very lighting conditions I shot it in. Of course, I shot it in daylight, I shot it in twilight, I shot it in low light, and I shot it in no light. It's a little susical after saying it that way. And it performs. I never had a situation using weapon light or facing light barriers or under night vision or any conditions like that where the dot wasn't usable, it wasn't there. So especially in low light conditions, pushing 1,000 lumens or 600 lumens or a lot of candela down range, close range on target, shooting white steel, backlighting, barrier lighting, whatever the lighting situation happened to be, the SCS 320 just performed. I never had a situation where the reticle washed out on me to where it wasn't as readily usable. And once you get that gun going, especially if you're shooting range quality ammunition, you start building up that cloud of smoke, which starts to diffuse your sight picture a little bit and make it a little bit harder to see that reticle. The green was just there, it was usable, and if I could see my target, I could hit it. Window size is very reasonable. The Glock SCS, first generation of Glock SCS sights, I like them for their performance. I don't personally use them because the window to me is just too small. There is such a thing as too small a window, just like there might be such a thing at some point as too large of a window as far as holster compatibility or something goes. Generally, I don't notice window size because just I'm focused down range. I'm looking through the window. I'm not looking at the window. So window size becomes an issue for some people with dot acquisition. So a lot of people will go to a larger window because it allows for them to have a less precise draw stroke while still acquiring the dot. And there's nothing wrong with that. The SCS window is perfectly sized for rapid, fast acquisitions. After getting 10 or 15 reps with it, it just kind of, the programming just set in, and I didn't have any issues acquiring the dot and presenting. I don't really use that segmented reticle very often, so I just turned that off and ran the 2MOA dot. And this is one thing that I've noticed from other SCS models. They say it's 2MOA, and this may just me getting old in my eyes or kind of starting to go, but the dot doesn't feel 2MOA. It feels a little bit bigger than that. And sometimes I'll literally, like, am I disabled? Like, am I not, what's going on? And I'll pick up that gun and compare it to 5 other guns that have 2MOA reticles. And even comparing this to a red reticle Holosun, so I grab a 508 or a 509 or whatever, the red dot feels a little bit smaller, but we're talking marginal. So it's kind of a nitpicky thing, but it is something that I did notice, so I wanted to tell you guys about it. Refresh rate is fantastic, so rapid transitioning from target to target, or sometimes you'll notice refresh rate a little bit more in failing light, so shooting it in twilight conditions like at dusk, and then getting into low light where refresh rate tends to be very noticeable, especially if you're shooting in very dark conditions where you only have a little bit of ambient light to positively identify your targets. No issues. It performs fine, it's intuitive, it's smart. I can't catch this thing adjusting. That's how fast it is. So if I press out and I've got no weapon light on and I can see my dot and I can kind of see my target, and then I turn that weapon light on, as soon as the weapon light comes on, the dot's adjusted. So there's never a lag time that I notice in shooting these things, and I definitely appreciate that a lot because I don't want to have a visual delay because I have to wait for an optic to catch up with the speed limit of the universe. Night vision is probably the only situation where I was a little aggravated. And again, this is something to think about. And I think Holosun's aware of this because they have other optics that have this feature, but they have an adjustment on them, like their the SCRS. It has an up and down. You can adjust the brightness on it. And that's more of a submachine gun rifle-centric optic, although you can mount it on handguns. So for that optic, they're like, yeah, let's put an up and down on this. Let's make this user adjustable. Let's not make it auto adjust only. And I bring that up because shooting handguns with night vision on is kind of a niche category. It's interesting because everybody asks about it, but I mean, I know people who do it, but it's not something obviously you're going to do as much. And there's exceptions. I'm sure there's people out there that this doesn't apply to. But the vast majority of shooters aren't going to shoot handguns under night vision nearly as much as they're going to shoot them during the day, and then a smaller category under low light conditions, weapon lights, things like that. So shooting this thing under night vision, if you're running binocular night vision like I do, I have PVS-15 white phos. The optic's in front of my dominant eye. My non-dominant tube is looking down range and it's not really blocked by the gun itself. So the light transmission through the window, if I'm running binocular, is going to be more of a concern. And I don't usually shoot binoculars, even though I can. I have a green phos binocular, which is what I film with. And as far as light transmission through the lens goes, obviously that's a bigger deal if you only have a monocular. I think the light transmission was fine. You can see, you get enough light through the glass that if you're pushing, especially if you're pushing IR light downrange to diffuse your target, you're going to see it fine. And let's be realistic about this. Are we talking about how usable the reticle is, or at what distance can I PID and use the reticle? And I think that's a conversation that isn't nearly discussed enough. A lot of guys want to shoot night vision at steel at 300, 400, 500 meters, which isn't as realistic. And again, we're talking about night vision, so we're already dealing with something that's probably not very realistic, or not very probable, I should say. Your likely self-defense engagements are going to be much closer than that. So we're talking 5, 10, 17, 25 meters versus 100, 200, 300, 400 non-magnification. PID is a big deal. So seeing your target and being able to positively identify a target, two totally different things. So at pistol ranges with this thing, I had no problem actually identifying my target and knowing it was a shoot target and engaging it. With a binocular, running binoculars like PVS 15s, non-issue. But the reticle does bloom pretty bad because it's auto adjust only, and I think using the optic under dark conditions, there's very little ambient light, the optic is assuming it's dark, so it's got to have the reticle at a certain brightness for you to actually be able to see it. So it's still pretty dim, but then I put on a light intensifying device, night vision, and the optic doesn't know that. So it takes your 2 MOA dot and it makes it about a 9 MOA dot. And that's just ballpark. That's not like actual precise measurement. That's just measurement of my experience at the eye. Still usable, especially with binocular night vision. With binocular night vision, it is a little bit more noticeable, but you have enough light transmission through the lens that you can still shoot well. Well, what about durability? As you guys know, throughout my testing procedure of my 2,000 rounds, I test durability in a number of ways. One of them is one-handed manipulations. What if I only have one hand available to me, so I need to like tap and rack, or do a reload and rack it off of something? And that's something I'm always going to do during my testing process. I just throw dummy rounds in some magazines and I work off a barricade or some other device, so I can just see if that's going to disturb the zero. And another thing, as you guys know I do, is a drop test every 500 rounds. And of course I'll be doing that till the end of time. So every 500 rounds I do a shoulder height drop test to see if, one, the durability's there, and two, if I lose zero. And this is something I worry about with some guns more than others. The SIG is one I worry about it because their footprint has no recoil lugs, recoil bosses. So the optics have to fit just perfect in that shoe, because sometimes dropping an optic, as you guys have seen from other videos, just 2 screws and no other points of contact, even though those 2 screws are there, you can still have an optic skip, jump, adjust, or twist. And if the shoe isn't really tight in the footprint, if you don't have really good fences on the front and in the back, the optic can twist enough that you lose your zero. The reason, of course, I do the drop test, for those of you who aren't aware, but I'm sure most of our Patreon viewers are, is not because I think people are going to drop their guns, but they're gonna. If you haven't, you will. That's just how gravity works. Is to see if the optic can handle a sudden, intense hit. I'm just using the shoulder height drop test as a consistent, repeatable test. And of course, it's not scientific, it's life is chaos. So I'm not using a drop jig so it hits at a perfect specific angle. I'm just dropping the gun. And I may hold it a little bit different each time so it drops and hits in a slightly different way. But at the end of the day, it's just a drop test. And people either agree with it or they don't. And every 500 rounds, I drop that gun and then check zero. So, first up, let me show you my confirmation group. This is right after I got it zeroed, set the cameras up, and filmed a 25-yard group shooting 124 grain gold dot bag supported. And then we have our drops. 1 drop every 500 rounds. And our final group, the real test, did it maintain zero? So here's a final 5-round group, 25 yards, 124 grain gold dot, fired after that last drop test after 2,000 rounds. Not only did it maintain zero, no lens breakage. I've got some marring, some pretty deep gouges on the body just from the general use and the hard use and the almost unrealistic use of the optic. But my lenses are good. I got a front lens, back lens. I still have an enclosed optic. Everything is good to go. And that's just a testament to Holosun's durability. This isn't the only optic they have that has made it through my testing. They make one of the most durable optics out there. You can break any optic if you drop it right or if it gets hit right, but just considering I'm dropping what is a pretty heavy handgun onto flagstone from shoulder height 4 times, 4 opportunities for life's chaos to get in there and break something, and nothing did. And that's a testament to the durability of this optic versus other optics that are out there. The additional feature of the fact that I don't have to worry about batteries, it is direct for a P320 footprint, or you can run it on, some people have compatibility plates. I've already seen people running the 320s on guns that aren't 320s. So they'll take the SCS and get a compatibility plate from C&H or whoever makes them and run it on a PDP or something like that. It's something that you can do if you want to. As far as optic itself, I think it's fantastic. And like I said, this is where we're going. All the other features have kind of already been done. We've got battery changing that doesn't require us to remove the optic from the gun. We've got multiple reticle options. We're getting a lot more enclosed optics. Durability is up there. Overall quality is high. So when it comes to what's next for pistol size optics, this is it. And Holosun's already doing it. And by the time everybody else kind of jumps on this train, which eventually they will, Holosun will have been doing it for years and years and years and years. So are they leading? And as far as innovation goes, definitely in this regard they are, because there's only one other optic out there that I have personally used and that I would recommend with an auto adjust feature that is as smart as the Holosun's, and that is the Trijicon RMR HD. HD is a fantastic optic, but it is an open emitter, got a weird shape, and well, it's significantly more expensive than the Holosun. But it's got a fantastic auto adjust feature, good programming, segmented reticle options, all those other things. But speaking just on the P320 SCS, or the 320 SCS, SCS 320, you're not really going wrong. So if you have a SIG footprint, this optic just, you're not really compromising anything to use it. It's got a fantastic size, fantastic footprint. It's going to fit the gun. You don't have to worry about the batteries. And if you're cool with green reticles, it's going to be absolutely fantastic. So I highly recommend the SCS 320. Till next time, Patreons, Aaron Cowan, Stage Dynamics, train accordingly.